Let's get started. As always, vocabulary sheet share here. You are welcome to screenshot old school pen and paper. Remember, you will also get a copy of this along with a copy of today's class. So you're also welcome to sit back and watch. So let's first start with a perhaps a place you didn't expect we would start if we're talking about fitness and exercise, which is the root kaf shin resh. Kaf shin resh, many of you know as the word we say in English, and in turn comes from the Ashkenazi pronunciation of the word kosher, right? Kosher in Hebrew simply means fit. If something is kasher, which is the modern Hebrew way that we say the word kosher, if something is kasher, it's fit, i.e., fit for consumption, according to Jewish dietary laws. And this root has everything to do with fitness. It's going to give us a lot of words. You can already see a huge list here, and almost all of them have to do with fitness. So we're actually going to explore this root in order to understand how we talk about fitness in general, because fitness isn't just physical fitness when we use this root in a lot of words in modern Hebrew. Okay? So first off, the word you're normally understanding is the modern Hebrew word for fitness. Kosher or kosher or kosher in modern Hebrew is not kosher. Kosher in modern Hebrew is fitness. Okay? Very important distinction. We've talked about this before. It is not a judgment on the Hebrew that you speak that is not modern Hebrew in terms of its morphology and phonology, i.e., how you spell it and how you speak it. But it is important to understand there's a difference, and not everyone in Israel is going to understand if you speak with an Ashkenazi accent. And that's going to also be an important lesson that we're going to learn again next week as we get ready for the biggest holiday of them all, Pesach, right? So in modern Hebrew, fitness is kosher. Okay? Again, however you want to pronounce the letter resh, kosher, 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 fitness. Okay? And you're going to see this word come up several times in our list. The same root gives us kasher. Kasher is what we say in English, kosher. Okay? If you want to say if is a food kosher, meaning is it in accordance with Jewish dietary laws, in modern Hebrew, the word is kasher. Okay? Kashrut, that word stays the same in modern Hebrew. Kashrut is the laws regarding to Jewish dietary restrictions. Hechsher is a kashrut certificate. And then we get some words that have nothing to do with kashrut anymore. Okay, they all have to do with being fit. Because again, kasher means it's fit for consumption, but it also means fit as in fitness. But it also means in a lot of other ways how we're fit. So for example, the word kashir, if you watch a lot of Israeli news, hopefully you are more and more as we cover it in our media literacy classes, you'll see a lot of Law and Order style, not style, but genre articles, i.e., about trials. Right? And they often talk about is someone who is convicted of crimes, are they kashir lamod ladin? Are they fit or competent to stand for trial? Okay, kashir from our same root means fit as in the sense of competent. Right? Is someone competent to do something? We often hear this term in everyday Hebrew with regards to justice in the justice system. Right? Hachshara. Hachshara is training. Those of you who grew up in labor Zionist Tnuot Noir and youth movements, you know this term very well. Hachshara, right? The preparation in getting ready to go to Israel or any transition year. Hachshara is a term we use in general for training. It isn't necessarily physical training. It can also be training for a job, training for some new position, right? Hachshara, the act of training. Machshir, we've actually talked about this word a lot, and you hear this word used in modern Hebrew all the time. Machshir is any appliance or tool. Okay, the same root gives us all these words, including an appliance or tool. Okay. Mukhshar, an adjective, is someone or something that is talented or trained. Okay, which leads us to our next word, talent. In Hebrew, a talent is kisharon. Talents are kishronot. Okay, all coming from the same root. And finally, kishurim, qualifications. Okay, so this one root, which we're obviously going to circle back to because it has to do with fitness, right, gives us all sorts of words that have to do with seemingly very different things, but they all come down to the word in English, fit. Okay, how are things fit? How are they prepared? How are they ready? How are they trained, right, to be used? Okay, so let's see already one example of this root in application. Chadar kosher. Chadar kosher. This is a compound noun of the Hebrew words cheder, which simply means a room, and kosher, fitness. So the room of fitness or fitness room, which changes slightly in pronunciation because it's for it's to understand it's two compound nouns, chadar kosher. Okay. So if you go to a gym in Israel, it's called a chadar kosher. It may be called something very fancy, and we're going to talk about more about that in advance of Wednesday's class when you're going to be using these words and several conversation prompts to talk about these. For example, in Israel, it's very common to call your local community center slash gym a country. Country comes from country club. It is not a country club in the American context. It is a country club in the sense of it has multiple facilities. It is not about snooty restrictions and things like that. Usually they're in fact municipal institutions like here in Tel Aviv. We'll talk about that more in advance of Wednesday. Shi'ur, many of you know this word, shi'ur or shi'ur, depending on how you say the letter resh, is a lesson. That's not just an academic lesson, that also could be a lesson at a chadar kosher. So if you're taking a lesson, for example, in spinning, there is no specific Hebrew word for those of you who enjoy spinning, as it's said in Hebrew. Or perhaps you're looking for a shi'ur aerobi, right? An aerobic lesson. Okay? Or in general, you're looking for kosher gufani. Remember, kosher means fitness, but here we're specifying it. Kosher gufani. Gufani is the adjective form of the word guf, which means body. So gufani, physical. Okay? Kosher gufani, physical fitness. And then finally, we can't separate this. We've talked a lot about food in with Cafe Oleh, but obviously, if we're talking about fitness and exercise, we can't leave out tizuna or tsuna, depending on how you want to pronounce it. Nutrition. Okay, tsuna, tizuna, nutrition. Another root that comes up a lot when we're talking about fitness and exercise is Shin Kuf Lamed. We've talked about this root a lot in very different contexts because this is the root that gives us Israel's currency, the shekel. Shekel, like all currencies around the world, were originally weights. They were a unit of weight, right? You paid for something depending on how much it weighed. So a lot of the terms we have around the world, Brits, you can chime up now. What's the name of your currency? The pound. Okay. Same thing in Hebrew, in the Bible. The one of the weights and measures used is called the shekel. That is in turn our term for our currency, but it does have to do with to weighing things. And we've talked about this in the context of, for example, going grocery shopping and asking, can you weigh something for me? Efshar lishkol li mashu, right? Lishkol means to weigh, W-E-I-G-H. Mishkal is a weight. Mishkal is both weight, is really more, I should preface this. Mishkal is weight in terms of your weight, how much you weigh, okay? Versus a mishkolet, one, or plural mishkolot. Mishkolet, or more commonly mishkolot, are weights in the sense of dumbbells, barbells, any type of weight that you're lifting in order to perform exercise. Okay, same root, both have to do with weighing, but slightly different. Mishkal is your own weight, how much you weigh. Mishkolot are the things you pick up and use for exercise as weights. Okay. Another root, you know this one from a lot of different places, and we're going to use it again when it comes to fitness and nutrition. Okay. Aleph Mem Nun. Aleph Mem Nun is an important one because it gives us obviously a lot of words that many of you know, right? Um, Amen, the easiest one you know. Leha amin, to believe. Emunah, faith. But it also gives us words that have to do with training. Didn't know that, right? In Hebrew, if you want to say an exercise or training in general, right? I'm going to the gym for training. That word is imun, the same exact root, imun. Okay. A me'amen is a coach. Me'amen, male coach. Me'amenet, female coach. And the person who's being coached, the trainee, right? The trainer or the coach is the me'amen, me'amenet. The trainee is a mitamen or mitamenet. Okay, so in Hebrew, we have two different verbs that in English we only have one, right? In English, you can say to train, and that could mean the coach trains the trainee or the trainee trains in the gym, right? Either way, you're using the same verb to train. In Hebrew, we separate that out. Hebrew, again, for having fewer words than English, much fewer, is very efficient. If I saw these two verbs, and we've talked about what we call binyanim, the form that verbs specifically take, when you learn those binyanim, you understand the difference between these two verbs, even though they have the same root. Le'amen is to train someone, right? And lehitamen can be understood as to be trained, i.e., the person who is being trained, the trainee, the participant. Okay. So, for example, if you wanted to say the coach trains the trainee, it's going to be a little bit of a tongue twister, but in Hebrew, it makes complete sense. Ha'me'amen, me'amen et hamit amen. Okay. Or I can say, I train in the gym. Ani mitamen b'chadar kosher. Okay. Two different things that in English translate the same way, train. But in Hebrew, very specific who's doing what, right? To train, i.e., by the coach, by the trainee. Okay, very important distinction. Many other verbs, by the way, and we've talked about this before in the past and we'll continue to, many verbs in Hebrew follow this exact pattern and you'll learn it. For example, we're going to see this verb in a little bit in terms of a exercise um, uh, movement. Lechabek. Lechabek is to hug. Lehitchabek is to be hugged or to become hugged or to get hugged. Okay, we use this a lot. Linashek is to kiss. Lehitnashek to get or become kissed. Right? The same thing here. Le'amen to train. Lehitamen to get trained. Okay? Let's keep moving on. So we talked about exercise in general, imun, and now we have the word targil. Those of you who study in ulpan or any other form where you're learning Hebrew in Hebrew, you often have to deal with targilim or targilim, right? Targilim are exercises, and they're specific exercises. In the context of physical fitness, we use that, right, in physical fitness, and we're going to look at a few in a second. But if you're learning Hebrew, for example, that could be an individual sentence you need to translate or fill in the blank, right? An exercise in general that you need to do. We also use this term, by the way, as a military exercise, meaning it's preparation for something else, right? Targil. And also, part of or a form of a targil can be metichot. Metichot are stretches. Okay, we've talked about this verb before, this root before, and I'm going to put all the roots of all the major words before you get the spreadsheet because there's a lot to go over. But metichot also, by the way, means a practical joke. Apropos being April Fool's Day tomorrow, April the 1st. Okay, let's look at some other action words. And then if we have time, I want to show you all of these in application. So first, always important, whether it's yoga, which by the way is the same term in Hebrew, yoga, or in weight training, or in aerobic, or whatever it is, neshima aruka. Neshima aruka, a deep breath, right? Neshima, breath, the act of breathing, and aruka, long, or in this case, deep in English. Okay? Neshima aruka, a deep breath. In Hebrew, it literally translates to a long breath. Okay? The opposite being linshof, to exhale. Okay, linshof, that could be, again, you're practicing your breathing in general or in a context of exercise, whatever it may be. You're at a doctor and they ask you to linshof. Now you know what that word means, to exhale. Let's look at some other terms that you're going to hear a lot in various types of kosher gufani, physical fitness. Lechabek, to hug, meaning you're bringing yourself together, right? Different parts of your body together. Lachazik, right? Lachazik is to hold. Maybe it's to hold a position, maybe it's to hold an object. Two words I always think are very important. I always mess these up, even in English. Right? You see the sign and your brain just doesn't think that way. You're used to pulling or pushing a door one way and it ends up being the other one. Doesn't matter if you're fluent or not fluent in a language, you always mess this up. Limshoch is to pull and litchof is to push. Okay. So for example, we talk about this a lot at Cafe Oleh, right? Limshoch, to pull, is also the term we use for to withdraw, as in ani moshech kesef me'akaspomat. I withdraw money from the ATM. Or you're waiting in line somewhere, and let's say you're waiting for a bus, and the bus comes, and there's a long line, and all of a sudden, people start getting a little antsy, and you need to yell out lo lidchof, don't push. Okay. Lehorid, to lower. Let's say you're asked in a given exercise to lower your legs or raise your legs or lower your arms or so forth. And lisovev, to turn. Okay. Push-ups. Let's look at some classic exercises you do at home and how we say them in Hebrew. Because some of these you're going to be able to get away with in Hebrew, right? Spinning, easy one. I'm not going to go through every one of them because a lot of these you can look up. For example, swimming, you can easily look that up in any basic dictionary, even the one I don't recommend, aka Google Translate, right? But some of these you may not be able to. Great example, shchivot smicha. A lot of words, right? A lot of ch sounds. Shchivot smicha are push-ups. Okay. Kfifot beten are sit-ups. And kriot are squats. Okay. Kriot is from the same verb likroa, also to bend. So you can think of it like that, right? You're bending when you do a squat. I'm not going through all the major body parts, but certainly ones that we're going to use a lot in physical fitness. Yadayim, hands, ktafayim, shoulders, agan, your pelvis, bilkaim, your knees, kapot raglaim, your feet. Raglaim are your legs, kapot raglaim are your feet. Beten, your stomach, gav, your back, and the one, at least here in Tel Aviv, everyone is obsessed with, shrir habeten, right? Shrir is a muscle. Shrir, any way you say it, is a muscle. Shririm are muscles. Shrir habeten is a compound noun, the muscle of habeten, of the stomach, i.e. abdominal muscle, aka abs. Okay, shrir habeten, abdominal muscles. If you wanted to make that plural, you would say shrirei habeten, abdominal muscles. Okay, let me put that there. Kadima, forward, achora, back, or back. It's not really backwards, it's more back, right? Kadima, achora. Kadima, forward, achora, back. And then finally, most important, especially when you're going to a chadar kosher, a gym, to bring tsiud, right? Equipment or kit. Oftentimes they'll tell you what that tsiud is if you sign up for a class. We're going to talk about that again. Vocabulary will be sent out ahead of Wednesday's class about equipment and things to bring. And lehitztayed from the same root is to be equipped. Okay? And oftentimes when you come to a class, they'll tell you what you need to be equipped with. Tzarich litztayed im magevet. You need to come with a towel, for example. Okay? So what we're going to do, even though you just learned these words, we're going to see them in use. So with that, I'm going to stop and reshare a screen. We're going to watch, which one do I want to watch? Okay, we're going to actually watch a little bit of an old one. So there are, because Israel has very much an emphasis on kosher gufani, on physical fitness, because of the army, it's the Mediterranean and so forth. Obviously, there are a lot of different exercise shows out there. There's a very famous coach named Gilad, who actually may have known from the 80s and 90s. He does a lot of aerobic workouts for video. They used to show him really early in the morning on channel 1 here in Israel. He does most of it in English. This is a different Gilad. This is Avri Gilad. Avri Gilad is a comedian, actor, all sorts of different things. And during Corona, he had the morning show. And so during Corona, he would lead the audience, obviously watching on TV, in physical fitness. Understanding he had an older audience watching, he wanted to be sure that they were still moving around because of all the restrictions we had here in Israel during Corona. And so he led a daily morning routine on live TV. So this is one example of it. Now, again, like a lot of physical fitness, it's going to be a lot of things you can just mimic and watch. But a lot of the words we just went over are the words he also uses in trying to explain to two participants who happen to be in the studio and are doing this for the first time. What it says in the background is says Arutz 13, channel 13, and what's slightly covering his head, covered by his head rather, Yachad na'avor et zeh. Together we will get through this, meaning Corona, and at the bottom right it says Yachad na'avor et zeh, again, together we'll get through this. Magefet hakorona, the Corona plague. Okay. So one example of what you can find on YouTube, and a great example of working out online, how to follow. We're just going to watch a few minutes of this and translate along the way.
אני רוצה ללמד אתכם היום את האימון שאני עושה כל בוקר כשאני קם.
אני רוצה ללמד אתכם. I want to teach you. What does he want to teach you? The ha'imun, right? The training that he does kol boker, every morning.
קם ב-4:30 בבוקר.
Wakes up at 4:30 in the morning. God bless his heart, as we say.
זה בערך 10 דקות, זה נקרא רוטינה.
It's 10 minutes, and he calls it harutina. Rutina, the routine.
סדרת תנועות שתגרום לכם להרגיש הרבה יותר טוב. פיתחה את הסדרה הזאת מדריכת הכושר שלי, יוסף עטל.
Right? This is a routine to help you develop your body and keep it moving. And it was made with his Me'amen HaKosher, excuse me, his fitness instructor, his fitness coach.
והיא סדרה נהדרת. אפשר לעשות את זה בכל גיל.
אפשר לעשות את זה בכל גיל. You can do this at any age.
אזרחים מבוגרים, קומו בבקשה.
Senior citizens, kumu bevakasha, get up from your seats, meaning stop watching TV for a little bit and get up and move for a bit.
זה יהיה קל ונהדר, בעוד 10 דקות תרגישו את הגוף שלכם אחרת.
10 minutes, your body will feel completely different.
לגמרי, בסדר? אנחנו נעשה את זה היום, וגם בימים הבאים. לפעמים אני אלמד אתכם עד שתדעו את זה בעל פה, וזה פשוט נהדר. את עושה איתי?
כן.
את עושה איתי?
אני לא כאן.
Asking, will they do the routine with him?
בשביל יופי.
יפה. אז אנחנו כל תנועה אנחנו עושים 10 פעמים, חלקן אחר כך 10 פעמים.
Every movement, every different targil will do 10 פעמים, 10 times.
לכיוון השני או משהו, תסתכלו עליי. אנחנו קודם כל נתחיל בלסובב את הכתפיים קדימה.
לסובב את הכתפיים קדימה, right? Turn or rotate your shoulders forward. We have all three of those words in our vocab list.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. עכשיו נסובב אותם אחורה. 1.
ועכשיו נסובב אותם אחורה. Now we'll turn them back, right? We'll do circles going backwards. Okay, you get the idea.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. עכשיו נסחי חתירה. 1.
נסחי חתירה. So I told you I wasn't going to talk about swimming, and here he's doing swimming, right? Khatira being one of the movements. You can figure out which movement it is quite quickly.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. נסחי גב.
Nische gav, right? Gav is your back. So what movement is he doing?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. נהיה תחנת רוח, ושימו לב.
Nia tachanat ruach. We're going to be a tachanat ruach. You can figure out what this is very quickly, I think.
1,
כזה.
2, 3,
All right, tachanat ruach, a windmill.
4, 5, 6.
Okay, you get the idea. Great resource. Obviously, I'm going to share this with you along with the vocabulary sheet and the video. I'm going to show you one more video as well. Slightly different, a very popular YouTube vlogger who does home yoga instruction. And obviously, he's going to instruct at the same time. Let me pull him up. Okay, Gal. And right, metichot. See if we can move that here. Metichot, right? Stretches. 15 dakot metichot. I'm reading the name of it at the top. 15 minutes of stretching besignon yoga, in the style of yoga. Right? So watch a little bit of this and listen to him as well. This one, again, you're going to follow him as he does it.
זמן להירגע עם סרטון מתיחות חדש, וכמו שהרוב באינסטגרם העדיפו, הוא יהיה בין 10 ל-15 דקות.
He's talking faster, but you can understand everything, even if you slow it down. 10 to 15 minute exercise routine.
מוזמנים גם אתם לעקוב באינסטגרם, ובינתיים בואו נתחיל על הגב. נתחיל בשכיבה, נשלב.
Natchil b'shkiva, right? Shkiva is one of our words in the context of, I think it was push-ups, right? Shkiva, lying down.
אצבעות הידיים, נסובב את כפות הידיים כלפי מעלה, וניקח את הידיים אחורה כמה שאנחנו יכולים.
Right? Even if you can't understand every word, you can follow along physically, like I said before, and in most physical fitness routines, the same thing, right? So even if you didn't understand what he was saying literally, you can see he put his fingers together and stretched them over his head all the way back.
רוצים להרגיש את המתיחה גם באזור הכתפיים, גם באזור האמות ומפרק כף היד. ניקח פה שתי נשימות עמוקות.
Right? Kach shte neshimot amukot. Take 2 deep breaths.
מעולה. עכשיו בואו נחבק את הברכיים אלינו.
Right? Bo nechabek et abirkaim elenu. Right? He folds up his knees to literally hug his knees to his chest.
נחזיק ככה כמה שניות.
Nachzik kama shniot, right? Hold, lachzik, hold, lekama shniot for a couple seconds.
וניקח את שתי הברכיים שמאלה, נוריד עם יד שמאל את הברכיים לצד השמאלי.
Right? Norid et abirkaim, lower the knees using his hand.
יד ימין ניקח ימינה, נסתכל ימינה גם. אנחנו רוצים להרגיש את המתיחה באזור הגב התחתון. גם תרגישו באזור הישבן של צד ימין.
Okay, you get the idea. Obviously, I'll send this as well. But again, a lot of this is understood once you watch it, but now we have the basic vocabulary to follow at least these two um, uh, exercise routines. A lot of other ones, again, they're going to use the same words because those are the things we often work on, whether it's legs, our shoulders, our arms, muscles. We have that word now. Okay. So before I start answering questions in the Q&A, I'm going to send all of that to you. Wednesday's class, we're going to talk more about this in our breakout rooms. You're going to have scenarios to talk about, not just signing up for a gym and asking what facilities they have. You're going to have questions about, can you help me with a specific routine? You're going to ask each other about your own physical fitness, what exercises you like to do, nutrition, and things like that. Okay, so if you haven't signed up for our Cafe Oleh conversations, it's a great opportunity, number one, to practice the Hebrew we learn in general and specifically on Mondays, but it also gives you extra vocabulary. So definitely sign up if you haven't already. The link is on our website. It should also be in the emails that you get from us. So please sign up for that. Let me just quickly see. Great, we have a bunch of questions. Before we get started with questions, I just want to give you a short update on our schedule for the next coming weeks. So today, we obviously had class. Wednesday, we have Cafe Oleh conversation. Next week, we also have class as usual. The week before Pesach, on Monday and Wednesday, we have class. Highly recommend that you come, whether you are celebrating the holiday in Israel or not. We're going to talk about all things Pesach and how it's specifically celebrated in Israel, and all the words that we use specifically on Pesach that we actually use all year round. It's a great lesson. So definitely join us next week for Pesach. During Pesach itself, meaning in 2 weeks from now, the week of April 13th, we are off for Chol HaMoed Pesach, the intermediate days of Pesach. So the 14th and 16th, we are off of April. We're back online on the 21st and 23rd, and for those next few weeks. So we are back online after Pesach, starting the 21st, Monday, April 21st. And will then complete our spring session the week of May 5th. Okay, so the first week of May is the end of our spring session. And due to operational constraints, we're going to take a 3-week break. So we're going to be gone for the rest of the month of May after the first week. And Cafe Oleh will resume at the beginning of June. You will already start receiving in the next few weeks a link to sign up for summer session. Don't worry, we're going to explain all of this again in our upcoming classes. But you'll get a link to sign up for our summer classes, which will begin in June after our hiatus. And finally, before I get to questions, during that hiatus and in general, if you are interested in private lessons with me, either one-on-one or in a group, for pay, as opposed to what Nefesh B'Nefesh generously offers you, you're welcome to be in touch by email. I'm putting it in the chat, but I'll, of course, remind you as well, j@hayati.com. That's the name of my business. With that, let me get to your questions. I was told to ask for the Teudat Kashrut for the kosher certificate. Is that wrong? It's not wrong. Great question. So let's look at our word. Here it is. Okay. Hechsher, think of it more as the logo that goes on a specific item of food, right? Those of you coming from North America, you of course know the OU, Chaf K, triangle K, whatever it may be. That's more what hechsher means. And I'm going to actually write that in here, on specific items, right? What you're talking about, a teudat kashrut, is usually what you find, for example, in a restaurant or a catering company or something like that. That is a kashrut certificate for a business, is simply called a teudat kashrut. But a hechsher is the logo, the insignia on a specific item that indicates it is under specific supervision. Okay. Is tizuna is also diet? Not really. Tizuna is really more nutrition. We say diet or dieta for diet. Tizuna is really nutrition. When do you use imun versus hachshara for training? Great question. Hachshara, we never ever use for physical training. Okay, training, let me put this, for example, e.g. professional, right? Hachshara is for training for a position or for something along those lines. Imun is used almost exclusively for exercise or training, right? Physical exercise. Great question. Please provide words for swimming. You can look those up. I will happily send you all more links to specific terms for specific things, but a lot of this is going to be used by our favorite resource. I'm actually going to show you right now. And we've talked about this before, but I am going to show you a great resource that is easily accessible by everyone. Let's see if I can find it. It should be open on my computer already. Here it is. Share. Right. One of the best resources is Wikipedia, right? If you go into any article you're normally looking for, there almost is always at the top a toggle for a language. And Hebrew is one of the most used languages, has some of the most articles in on Wikipedia. So for example, this is Targilei Hitamlut. These are all different exercise routines. So for example, Kfifat Beten, we talked about that, right? A sit-up or a squat, a targil, right? A kri'ah, right? So I can click on this and find out the equivalent. Let's say I want to do it reverse, right? Let's say I'm looking up a word in English. This is to say, I'm happy to answer a lot of questions. But as I've talked about before, I'm not a human dictionary. A lot of these terms can be looked up on your own. So for swimming, I am not an expert in swimming whatsoever, which is why I didn't go into specific exercises in general, because then that gets very niche here. But I will be happy to provide that specific Wikipedia link for swimming terms. Okay. How do you say personal trainer? Amen, right? Trainer, coach. The word for personal, ishi. Okay. Okay, what is the verb for inhale? Great question. You can either say linshom, to breathe, or you can say lishof. Lishof is also to aspire for something, right? So lishof, linshof. But you can also say linshom, linshof. That verb we have to breathe. Okay. Isn't a blanket smicha? I knew someone was going to ask that question. Remember, folks, in Hebrew, we've talked about this multiple times and we're going to continue to talk about it. In Hebrew, spelling is destiny. Just because in modern Hebrew, two letters sound alike does not mean that you can exchange them. Smicha with a sin is a blanket. Smicha here has to do with a cup, right? To be samuch to something is to be close to it with a samech. You cannot mess up spelling in Hebrew. I know that poses a challenge to people who have issues with spelling like dyslexia. However, it is very important that you spell correctly in Hebrew, more so than in almost any other language, because it changes entirely the meaning, right? If words are 50% the root, you have to spell it correctly. So samech and sin, you cannot switch around. Great question. Okay, we have a few more. Let me see in the Q&A. How do you say deconditioned? As in, I am deconditioned because I've not exercised in a long time. I don't know that word. I'll happy to look it up later and be in touch with us by email, but I don't know that word. Even in English, I don't know that word. What is the difference between mukhshar and musmach? Great question. So mukhshar, like we said here, is talented or trained. Musmach is used more in Hebrew for licensed, right? If you are musmach, that means you're licensed or accredited to do something. Mukhshar is that you're talented or trained in general, right? It doesn't mean it comes with any sort of certification, but musmach almost always does. That's a great question. Someone's asking me specific things with regards to the air conditioner. I'm looking at all four of these things. All of these can be looked up on your own. None of these are idiomatic expressions. Again, we're going to do more vocabulary when it comes to the gym ahead of Wednesday's class, and that will be a separate additional spreadsheet. Would you consider reducing the speed of the YouTube? That's a great learning tool for you. I want you all to be at least accustomed to the pattern, to the tempo of how Israelis speak. But absolutely, you could slow down any of those videos you watched, not just to understand, but also to practice what they're doing. What is the Hebrew term for a physical therapist? Great question. You can either say the exact same thing, physiotherapist, or you can say a metapel physi. Metapel in general is someone who treats you for something. We can also say metapel, just meaning a therapist in general, someone who treats you. But a metapel physi or a metapel gufani, the term we already had, physical therapist. Okay. Um, looking. Um, sorry, I'm quickly looking to see. We have a bunch of other comments and questions. Great thing. Is Aleph Mem Nun also the root for art and artist? Yes. Aleph Mem Nun gives us a lot of different words. We only focused on the ones that have to do with our topic today, but many, many more are included in there. Absolutely. Okay. You said Google Translate is not a good tool. We've also had classes on that. You can look that up on our YouTube channel. We have a whole lesson just on free dictionaries online. But really quickly, context reversal is my favorite. Okay. That's the best one. Google Translate is at best 50 to 60% correct. Okay, with that, a lot to cover in a little bit of time. So, first of all, toda rabah, thank you all for joining. Like I said, this class, the spreadsheet, the videos we saw, including some bonus material from Wikipedia, will be sent in the next day or two and will be uploaded on YouTube. If you sign up in advance for our Wednesday class, you'll also get additional vocabulary that has to do with the gym. For example, common etiquette, how to sign up for classes, things like that. Highly recommend you join us. Even if you don't belong to a gym, it'll be really good use of our vocabulary from this week. And in general, talking about your own physical fitness and your own exercise routine. Even if you don't have one, maybe you'll learn a new one from each other. With that, again, toda rabah. See you hopefully on Wednesday. If not, see you next Monday for our next Cafe Oleh class. Till then, lihitraot, take care.